Hi there, and welcome to the second video in this series covering AI enterprise security with ClearML. So the first video was an introduction covering all the layers of the platform available to you, so you can implement a secure and robust AI platform. We briefly covered the controls around identity and access management, configuration governance, automation security, compute and data access governance, model serving, and audit and compliance capabilities. The link to that video is in the description below. In this video, we'll focus on setting up and testing an identity provider. We're going to enable group sync so we can onboard users. And then through platform access rules, we'll secure access to the resources available to your team and agents on the platform. So with that, let's jump in. Okay, so let's start by setting up our identity provider first. Then we'll do our RBAC sync, and then we'll look at setting up some access rules as well. But first, let's log into the platform here as our super user. Okay, so if we come over here to settings on the right hand side, and we'll scroll down here to identity providers. So I've got one already set up, which we're going to go through configuring now. I'm using Entra ID for this example, but obviously we support a wide variety of identity providers. For example, if I go up here to new connection under OIDC, you can see we have multiple provider options here: AWS, Google, Keycloak, Microsoft, Okta, Ping, or you can set up custom identity providers if you want to, if you're using LDAP, or we support SAML as well. So what I'm going to do here is just quickly jump over to the Azure dashboard here. And if we pop over to Entra ID and go down to our app registrations, you can see I've set one up already. So I'm going to just click in here, and there's some information that we'll need to copy over when we're actually configuring the identity provider. Okay, the main two ones are going to be the tenant ID and the application client ID as well. I've also created a blog, kind of a deep dive technical blog on this that kind of steps through it in kind of more detail. Around actually doing the Azure part of it as well. So I'll drop the link in the description below for that, if that might be useful for you. So I'm just going to jump back over here. And there's kind of two ways that we can configure an identity provider. We can just kind of pop in a well-known URL first, and the reason for doing that is that essentially it will just pre-populate the next field for us. So it's just kind of means less manual work. So if you go out, or if you Google that, or search on one of your chatbots, you'll find a link to most of the well-known URLs, and you just need to pre-populate that string with your tenant ID that you have here. So when you're adding it in, that's actually covered in the blog as well, by the way. So I'm just going to click next here. What you'll see is it's going to auto-generate the URL. So our ClearML web app URL, that's basically your URL for your logging into ClearML. And then you've got the callback URL, which is automatically generated for you. Okay, we're going to have to keep note of that, because essentially we're going to put that string back into the app registration page up in Azure. So we'll give it a display name and give it a client ID and step through that. But let's actually take a look at the one that I've already configured here. I've given it a display name here of MS Entra ID. So that's what you're going to see on the login page when a user is logging into the ClearML platform. So here's our client ID that I got from here. And then we go down here, and we're going to have to generate a secret as well. Okay, so the secret is actually going to be deleted after this video anyway. So we're going to pop in our secret, And then we're going to put in the authorization endpoint and the access token endpoint. So on the previous screen, if you'd put in the well-known URL, this would all automatically be populated for you. But if you're just doing it manually yourself, you can go up here and click on endpoints and you can copy it from here. Okay. So that's going to be our authorization endpoint. And then we do the same for the token endpoint is going to be here as well. So we have our authorization endpoint and then we have our token endpoint here that we need to copy over. And that's going to be basically the bulk of what you need to get up and running to sign in. But we're going to go a step further. As we said, what we really want to do is enable group sync on this. So when users are onboarding onto the system, everything is kind of handled for them automatically. What we want to do is take the structure that you have in your tenant, and we want to replicate that on the ClearML platform. So if I jump back here, for example, you can see here I've set myself up on this platform, and we've also set up a Bob user and a Jane user. So what we'll try and do is replicate. Bob is going to be a AI user. He's going to be kind of bringing LLMs into production, and Jane is more traditional ML ops role. Okay, so we want to reflect that identity that's already there in Entra or the identity provider, and we want to replicate that over in ClearML. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is that's all going to be handled through groups on Entra. So if we go down here, you can see that I actually have three groups configured. Okay, so we have our kind of admin, which is going to be me. I'll be the kind of super user of the platform. And we're going to have a Gen AI team and a ML users team. Okay, so if we pop in here, for example, into the Gen AI team, Bob should be in here. And there he is. So if we just step back one here to get ready for group sync, the main thing that we need here is the object ID. We're going to have to replicate that on the ClearML platform. So just jump back over here and close that out. If we jump down here to users and groups, what we're actually doing here is we're setting up that identical group structure on our platform. So then when we're doing the claims mapping, we're actually automatically going to onboard Bob and Alice and myself into the correct groups. So I've gone ahead and I've created a Gen AI App Engine team, which Bob is a member of. And then I've created the ML users group as well. Okay. So the main thing that you have to be conscious of here is that the UUID or the OID that we got from Azure just has to map identically in here. So that means that the claims mapping will be automatically passed through when Bob logs into the system for the first time. It's going to say, okay, Entra has given me this ID. We have a matching ID as well. So I'm going to put him into this user group. Okay. So I've actually already gone ahead. Bob is already onboarded onto the platform on my earlier on testing. So you can see he's actually already a member there because I impersonated that account and logged in as Bob. And he was auto-populated into the group. Okay. Alice hasn't logged in yet, but what we'll do in a minute is we'll actually log in and see if that happened correctly for us. Okay. So I'm going to jump back to our identity providers here. So we've already pre-populated this information that I talked about earlier. And we need to make sure that the obtain user information from identity token is ticked. Okay. We want to create a new user on first logon. And any additional settings then you may need to set for your environment. Okay, I don't need to set anything because this implementation is pretty straightforward. And these values are auto-populated for you, and that was enough for me. But your mileage may vary depending on your platform. So for the claims mapping, when you're Googling this, looking for Entra ID, the only thing we had to set here was OID. Everything else, the given name, family name, that can be whatever you want to configure. The important thing here is the user group synchronization. We need to enable that, and that's what I talked about, right? So we're going to do our claims mapping, Azure Entra, in the actual token that's sent, it's called groups. Okay, that would be different for different identity providers. It might be ID or a tenant ID or something like that. So again, you're going to have to kind of consult the documentation of your identity provider. But for Entra, it's listed as groups. Okay. For example, here, if we were doing LDAP, it would typically be common name CN, right? It would have to match whatever the CN name is. So we can specify the admin user group as well. So that's the group ID that I'm a member of in Entra ID. So I can put that in. So when I log in, I'm automatically added to the global administrator group on the ClearML platform. And that's about it, right? You can basically then decide if you wanted to prohibit any non-member sign up or log in as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and test that provider. Hopefully that should test okay for us. There we go. So that's a successful response there. So we'll close that out and cancel that as well. Okay, so our IDP is connected to Entra ID. And as I said earlier on, I had already gone ahead and onboarded Bob onto the system. So if we click on users here you can see Bob is already onboarded and he's been put into the correct administrator group here. Okay, and that's my account there. So what I'll do here now briefly is we'll open up a new incognito window and I'll actually log in as Bob on the platform. So here I am at the ClearML login screen. And you can see here we've got continue here with MS Entra ID. So I'm going to click on that guy. And there you can see Bob is being onboarded onto the system. Okay, so Bob has been onboarded onto the platform. So now what we want to do is set up our actual structure here of what we want to do. So I've gone ahead and created a couple of projects here. But access rules is where we're going to permit or deny access to various services on the platform. So if we go up here and click on add a rule, you'll see there's various resources available to users on the platform. We have projects, tasks, models, data views, hyper data sets, and queues. So what we'll replicate in this scenario is with regards to projects, we don't want Bob to have visibility to all projects on the system. And we don't want him to have visibilities to data views or queues on the system as well. Okay. So I've gone ahead and I've set a few up already. And this is the group ID for the GenAI app engine. And I've given him access to project B, but I haven't given him access to project A. What I've also done is I've given him access to a couple of queues on the system as well. He shouldn't have access to the ML queue, for example. His queue, so when he's submitting jobs onto the platform, should either be the LLM queue or the LLM serving queue. Okay, so I'm going to flick back here, log in as Bob. So you can see here, Bob only has access to Project B on the platform. Okay, so as you can look here, there's various other projects on the platform here, but Bob doesn't have visibility of Project A, he doesn't have visibility of Project C, and he doesn't have access to any of the other queues on the platform. So let's just test that briefly now. If we come up here to the orchestration and take a look at the queues, he has access to LLM, he's got access to LLM serving as well. Here's a couple of test tasks that I did earlier on. And if we look at the properties here, we can actually see that he executed that on the LLM serving queue. So for example, if I click on this and clone out this project, let's do that now. What we want to do is execute this and just verify that Bob only has access to the queues that we granted him access to. And there you go. So we'll choose the LLM serving queue and we can actually enqueue that then for execution. So that's a brief overview of setting up your IDP, configuring group sync, and then setting up some access rules and applying those to the users and the groups that they're a member of on the platform. In the next video, we're going to take a look at configuration governance. So that's all about enforcing compliance and policies on the platform around storage locations, container runtime images, and credentials as well. So thanks for your time today, and we'll see you on the next video.